way. And the thing was seen in or something very like it was seen in a cemetery, an old cemetery, sprawling one near London. And the same thing there, and only there they described it as the vampire creature, the Highgate vampire. Well, at the time, in the 60s, the Hammer movies, the horror movies, were very, very popular, and they're all about vampires. So, of course, the media dubbed it the Highgate vampire because it was a tall, dark, shadowy figure with mesmerizing eyes. But again, it had the red glowing eyes. It flew from a church steeple not far from the cemetery. It was seen around the cemetery, and it was seen by lots of people at different times. It actually caused quite a panic, and it had a high-pitched squeal. Now, we hear that constantly, too, that it sounds like a tape recording being played at high speed with squeaks and pipping noises and other noises and squeals. So is this the creature's wings that we're hearing, or its flying device, or is it actually making these noises itself vocally?
That is really interesting. I can say one thing, too. If you got 10 people in line that saw, a Mothman or a cryptic, or a UFO even, you know what? You're going to get a different description virtually off of, the basic might be there, but they're all going to vary because what happens, your mind is not prepared to see it, number one. So if you saw a Mothman, for example, your mind first is going to be, oh, hey, it's a guy dressed up in a costume. That's what this trucker thought. Then he realized it wasn't. You go into, your brain shuts down for a minute because it goes into shock. So maybe that's why we're seeing these different variations of what, the wings look like or the texture of the wings or what their face looks like. Hey, Rob, we need to go on a break for the stations. We'll be back in 2 minutes. So just hang in there and we'll be right back.
Sure.
You and I were living in the strangest of times on my hill, watching while the cities rise from the collapse that we left when the sun beat it down into the valley. Living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain. Seems that I knew you before, but when did I knew you? Funny how the colors bend when lifetimes start to blend. And we've been spinning mysteries bandana. Oh, living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com, and thank you.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
And here I am, and we're talking with Rob. We're talking about, cryptics, Mothman. Have you seen one? If you have, well, send me an email and tell me what you saw. You can get a hold of us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. Hey, Rob, you still with us?
I sure am.
Yeah, I just, think about it is if you, just think about, like you mentioned, there's footprints going to the well in the snow, and it stops, it disappears. Again, there's so many people that vanish worldwide on a daily basis with no trace of them. Something is going on.
Also, they will find them miles away. And this is pretty horrible, but they found children that were lost in national parks, and they disappeared, and a day or two later they're found 13, 15 miles away, sometimes on the top of a mountain. Now, how would a kid get... In one case, the child was mentally handicapped. There was no way.
Well, I remember... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's no way I could wander that far in that short a time. It was just physically impossible for the child to do so. And, of course, the child was dead. Now, was it picked up? Was it carried there? Was it a Thunderbird? Was it a Mothman? What was it, a UFO? We don't know.
Well, I just remember reading in the one book, that talks about, a person and his wife and child were out camping. And they were watching their child. The child was like 20 feet away from the father while he was setting up the camp. Again, the father was watching, but he just took his eyes off for a few seconds. He turns his head. His son is gone. He's 5 years old. Now, we might be talking about the same one. He panics. He looks around the area, doesn't find him, gets a hold of the rangers. They start looking. There is a couple rivers in the area. They figured this kid at 5 years old would have had to cross these rivers, which I don't buy that. A 5-year-old going across a sweeping river, let alone a few of them, and then be found 15 miles away on the side of a mountain with his clothes off to the side, folded up, if I remember right. And here's his remains. Now, how can
quite often they don't have their shoes. It's as if the first thing they do when they get taken or lost or whatever is they take off their shoes. Now, why would anyone do that? I mean, even a child. Why would a child? I mean, the going is tough. You're not going to take your shoes off, especially if you're cold.
No, but again, can you see a 5-year-old going across a raging river?
Absolutely not.
And then,
absolutely not. These guys, David Paulides really has it nailed pretty well. He sort of intimates strongly that it's Bigfoot. Of course, we don't know what it is, but are there cryptids? Well, there seem to be. We think of things as being like we know everything about everything. We don't. During World War II, there was a raft found, came ashore in Newfoundland, and there was some men on it. And they were in shock. They had been in the sea. It was really cold, and their ship had been sunk. And one of them had huge suction marks on his back. And they said it had to have been a giant squid, but at the time they didn't believe there was such a thing as a giant squid. That was just a monster movie stuff. It wasn't real. Well, it turns out there really are giant squids. And apparently they were attacked, and one man was taken off the raft that way.
Well, they were dinner.
Or a nice snack. I'm not sure which, but my point is we don't think these things exist. So they're just myth and legend. Be there monsters here? Well, sometimes there are monsters there. And by the way, with the Mothman, it is amazing how many cultures describe their demons as looking exactly like the Mothman. And we have statues and bas reliefs and all sorts of things that show these things and how they thought of them and how they looked. There is no doubt that even cave paintings of the Mothman exist from the last glacial period. So this really dates back, whatever these things are. So if they're from a UFO, and they could be, I just don't know, then either UFOs have been around for 30, 40, 50,000 years, which is quite possible, or these things are a cryptid. They're native to our planet. But all our cultures talk about demons, and quite often the demons look amazingly like Mothman. By the way, even our depiction of the devil is amazingly like the Mothman, a winged creature with red glaring eyes. I mean, where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't know, but could they be demons?
They could be. And in fact, they do seem like you use the term magical, which I kind of shy away from, but being sort of more hard-nosed about things. But I'm being a hypocrite because then I use the term supernatural, which really means the same thing. But they seem to have supernatural capabilities. So are they actual demons? I don't know. Or have we been seeing something throughout our history that we call demons because they are evil and malevolent and seem to be harbingers of death? Whatever these Mothmen are, they also seem to be able to see the future. They seem to know when something bad is coming.
Well, they're sure not sitting there and warning us of something bad coming. They might be seen there, when these things happen, like the Twin Towers or in other cases. But, that one bridge that collapsed with all those people, their cars, and it perished back, was it 20, 30
Bridge in
years?
Point Pleasant,
Yeah. I mean, but there were sightings of Mothman then.
Yeah. Well, they're there, but they're almost like tourists would be coming to an event that's about to start, and they're just sort of milling around and doing whatever they want to do. These creatures don't seem to be interested in warning us. It's almost as if they're just sort of going there to watch what's going to happen, as if they just want to view it. And in the meantime, they're just trying to keep occupied by tormenting and harassing the heck out of the locals.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. Like this lady, again, in Texas, from what I heard from Tom, could you imagine running into one of those creatures twice and hitting it the second time? I mean, could you imagine getting into your car and, go to your job that time of the morning? And unfortunately, it's a rural road out in the middle of nowhere. To get where she has to go, I'd be scared to death after that to even get in the car and go 2 feet.
I would either quit my job or I'd move into town. I'm sorry, but I was going to ask you, do you happen to know if she quit her job or moved to town? Because I certainly wouldn't keep on doing what she's doing. I mean, you know what they say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well,
I got a funny feeling to see a Mothman one time on the road, standing in the middle of the road, right? And you stop. And you get out of the car and tell, hey, you think it's a human, and you say, get off the road before you get hit and all this stuff, right? And it just glares at you with those eyes, and then it takes off, and you see it fly off. That would be so scary. I mean, I would be freaked out. But then again, a couple months later, you're going to work the same time, roughly in the morning, and you hit it. And it didn't seem to injure it too bad because it was standing on the road staring at you when you get out of your car, asking, are you okay? And then you realize it's not a human. And then you realize it looks like the same thing that you saw a couple months earlier. Did it mark her and waited for her?
Well, again, that seems to be the case. People involved in the Point Pleasant, I mean, so many people saw this thing. Now, you could put some down to hysteria, some down to misinterpretations. One skeptic even said, well, what they really saw was an owl. I haven't seen too many 7-foot owls with glowing red eyes that can pick up animals, and dump them places. But these things seem to be malevolent in nature. And I'm curious, the truck driver, did he say anything about changing his route or changing jobs? I mean, what would you do if that was you? If that had happened to you, would you continue being a truck driver on that route, or would you have serious doubts about continuing in that line of work?
I would myself not even want to be a truck driver after that. I had a truck driver, which he does, email me occasionally. He used to make long hauls. And in his case, what he saw, again, this was in Texas, going out of Dallas, going into the desert. Just before he got into the desert, he's just, listening to his music, and he looks out his side window, and he sees a bright light. He sees a cow going up in the sky. Now, the first thing he says, Gary, there was no ropes, there was no chains, but there was this bright light, and this cow was going head first, going up in the sky. He said the next morning that he got a hold of his boss and said, I'm not driving at night anymore. I'm not going to do long hauls.
I don't blame him. I mean, I'm laughing, but if I saw something like that, I'll be honest with you, I would have to seek the help of a therapist. I mean, when you see something like that, it's traumatic. That one woman at Point Pleasant really was permanently mentally damaged by what she saw. Another man committed suicide. His interactions with the Mothman and with Indrid Cold, a strange person or creature or whatever the heck he was seen hovering over the car in a it looked like the lampshade of an oil lamp glowing. And it stopped on the road in front of the car, and he got out. And he walked up to the driver, and the driver said that he felt like he was under a compulsion. And the man had a huge leering grin, and he asked what the lights were up ahead. And the man said, well, that's Parkersburg or some town close by. And then Indrid Coles said, do the people live